Live at Onigashima. I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Anthony. And today we got a two-parter for you. We got chapter 1139 and 1138. We missed last week, and we're here to get two banger chapters.
Yeah, and we couldn't miss last week. Last week, like, we were busy, but it was so crazy. How are we not going to talk about it?
Let's start with the cover stories, because I feel like with the two-part cover story, we can really get into it. We finally see in 1138. I'm all over the place with these, but we see that it's Who's Who. He's back, and then the next one we see that Who's Who's got two prisoners that to me look like Page One and Ulti.
Yeah, those horns, especially on the left side, it looks like the Page One hat that he would always wear, and that's kind of like Ulti's head shape. So I wonder why he's like capturing them and what he's gonna do to them. I mean, he's taking a sword, looking like he wants to like kill them or something.
Fan favorites.
I wonder if they like pissed him off or something.
Rebels, so it's like, you know, maybe we'll get a situation where Ulti and Page One team up with Yamato. Who knows? But we got to get into these big reveals. Let's just jump into the one of the most recent chapter. We got Scopper Gaban.
Yeah, I'm not super surprised. We mentioned this a few times into the chapter, and they just confirmed it here. It's like, oh yeah, this is Ripley's husband. At the end of the chapter, we realize that Yarsan is Scopper Gaban. I like his design a lot. It is the guy that Crocus met a long time ago, so everyone was right about that also. But he reminds me a lot, and this is definitely intentional, of Sanji and just his mannerisms. Like, they literally compare it to him in this chapter.
He's the left wing of the pirate king, or the left hand, or whatever, you know, like
the love missionary. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like 1-to-1. This is just playing up the whole Sanji versus Zoro thing, in my opinion. You know, like, and it's funny that Zoro kind of like makes some comments and is like, ugh, towards him.
He's just like trying to ignore him also, but. I mean, it's pretty cool to finally get this confirmation. Like, I wonder what it's going to lead to. One of the things I liked at the end of the chapter is him just being like, oh yeah, I love causing trouble. And then seeing as soon as like he finds the key for them, he's like, okay, well, let me cause some more trouble. Now you have to fight me to get this key. Obviously, he's just like testing them and wants to see what they're made of. It reminds me a lot of, for anyone who's seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, the thing with Boomy when they first meet him and having to do all those trials. It's a very similar vibe to me.
He kind of looks.
So
like
I wonder what kind of things he's gonna make them do.
Yeah, true that. I mean, it's interesting that he's been here for so long. Like, I'm sure that since he's been here on the island, he's met Shanks while he's here, right? I mean, Shanks and Gaban probably be talking all the time.
Yeah.
You know, because if this is like Shanks' homeland and everything, or at least like one of the places that he frequents, and it'll be interesting to see like power scaling wise where Gaban kind of lands, because, you know, we think Rayleigh has been falling off because he's older or whatever. Like, he had that whole thing with Blackbeard where he kind of you know, said, oh, I don't know if I'd be on Blackbeard's level or whatever. And Scopper Gaban, you know, we're assuming now would probably be about the same. We definitely got to put him in the top 30 next time, you know. We got to put him in our world tournament.
I mean, they said it in this chapter, at least in their prime, they're like the equal of Roger and Rayleigh also, which I thought was really interesting, because in the Straw Hats we have like a clear list, like Luffy's number 1, Zoro's clearly number 2, and then Sanji number 3. But no, I know people like will power scale Zoro and Sanji like kind of the same, and I think this is confirming that. But I'm surprised that they were so close to Roger, Gaban, and Rayleigh.
Yeah,
that's the one that surprised me even more, honestly.
It was interesting because like I feel like we don't really even. I mean, obviously the foreshadow was from forever ago, right? With the Crocus thing, but we really didn't even know Scopper Gaban before the Odin flashback, right?
And even in the Odin flashback, it's not like we saw that much of him. There was a few panels. We saw what his weapons were the axes, which is really cool that they mentioned here. Like, just taking out, like, a bunch of pirates and, like, massacring a mountain just seems like kind of for fun, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like he didn't really have to do that. He just wanted to take out the entire mountain.
But it's cool that we see that, like, there's that scene that they explain, like, oh, he took out a bunch of whatevers. And it kind of gave me the flashback of, like, my own flashback to Odin's flashback where they all get cornered at one point, and then Odin goes crazy, and then Scopper Gaban and like Buggy and Shanks are all there, and like we don't really get to do it. We don't really get to see what Scopper Gaban's capable of because he's saving it for this, right? Like I would love to see like a Luffy. This is kind of like a scrimmage, right? Like we're not really gonna see Scopper Gaban go all out, but Zoro and
You think
Luffy are
Luffy's
there.
just gonna gear 5 immediately and just be like, give me that
Well,
shit?
it'd be interesting if, like, you know, it was a little bit of a scuffle and maybe Scopper Gaban's able to teach Luffy something else because, like, we always said, right, that, and this was kind of confirmed in this chapter, that at the beginning of the Red Line, we get Crocus, which is the first Roger pirate that we encounter, and then in the middle of the Grand Line, we get Rayleigh, and then now we get Scopper Gaban. So it's like, and they all kind of teach Luffy something along the way. Crocus taught them what the Grand Line even was and like how to navigate it and that sort of thing, and then kind of set the world building too with like the Red Line and Laboon, and then Rayleigh kind of expanded on that, especially with Haki, and now Scopper Gaban. You know, I don't know if it's gonna be like Devil Fruit lore or maybe just like more
Well,
world lore.
I have a theory on that. I think, and it's kind of laid out and foreshadowed in this chapter, where Gaban goes, "Oh, love is freedom," and freedom is one of the big themes of this chapter. And right after, he lists a bunch of like mixed races, or mixed blood races, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's gonna teach Luffy the value of uniting different like races and countries together,
Right.
because while Luffy has gone to a bunch of different countries and has like made like allies everywhere, he's never actually like gotten them to work together necessarily. And I don't want to skip too much into it right now, but that's kind of what we see in the mural also, is just a bunch of different races working together. So I feel like Scopper Gaban is going to be the one to just kind of like show him what this unity is, and that's going to be his big teaching.
Yeah, I could totally see that. It'll be interesting to see like what Oda uses Scopper for. I mean, he clearly has kind of like a mixed feeling on like, or maybe not a mixed feeling, but just like, I don't know, it's a little up in the air how he feels about Loki and how they're trying to free him and everything. He's like, well, I mean, I guess, but you got to be strong enough to contain
He's
him
like,
and
I don't think
everything
it's the
too.
smartest, but I'm not going to stop you. I'd love to see that shit
Yeah,
happen.
he is like, that'd be kind of dope, you know? Like, haven't seen this kind of stuff since Roger. One thing I do want to point about this chapter before we move on to, obviously, like, all of the lore of the last chapter is just the circle, right? So it's still there. And Luffy's like, oh,
Yeah, I
wonder
thought that
if
it
we
was
saw
interesting that it was still there, honestly. I thought it would have disappeared kind of like it did on Egghead.
Yeah, well,
But
did
I
it
guess they
disappear on
might be.
Egghead? I guess we didn't really see that, right? I mean, we only
I
maybe
guess
it
we don't know
disappeared
for
after
sure.
they like poofed back to Pangea Castle,
Yeah.
right? Because at that
Well,
point,
that's what I was thinking. I thought this circle was left here so they can teleport back, because maybe these God's Knights can't actually summon it themselves, so they have to leave it there in order to be sent back. But I don't know.
it'll be interesting because like what that tells me is that the God's Knights are at least like still here and probably unaware of what's happening at the circle. Like it's not like they step into the circle or whatever, and the God's Knights are like, oh my god, like I feel something, or Emu even like, I don't know if the circles themselves are that like omnipresent or if it's just like a conduit for things. So
Yeah.
it'll
And with the circle being there, we saw in the last chapter also that they were finally leaving Loki alone after kind of beating him up. So we thought before that they were going to go to Loki and see the God's Knights there. But now to me, I'm kind of thinking maybe the opposite. Maybe they're going to be the God's Knights are going to be heading back to this circle to like do something, and they're going to meet them here in this castle instead.
which will be interesting to see like what happens with Loki. So jumping back to the last chapter, because this is where a lot of the new lore drop
Craziness.
has been happening, right? So
Yeah.
we start off there with Loki, and he's been beat up, he's been destroyed, all of his friends destroyed, and Shamrock summons Cerberus, right, from his sword. Kind of a crazy feat.
It's pretty crazy, honestly. I mean, one of the things people have been saying, and this is what I thought initially too, like the first thought I had is, oh, Shamrock's sword ate the Cerberus devil fruit.
Yeah.
And we've seen that before. Like Oda had what's his face? Spandam, his sword ate a devil fruit. We saw the one in Alabasta, the gun that ate a devil fruit also. So the logical next step would to have a sword eat a mythical Zoan fruit. But if that is the case, and this is the Cerberus fruit, one of the theories people had for a long time is that Blackbeard has the Cerberus fruit, and that's why he can eat multiple devil fruits, and they
That's
thought he
why
would
he's
have
like
more.
associated with the number 3, like three-headed dog kind of thing. Like they wanted him to be very in line with hell. And by they, I just mean theorists. But like, I think one thing that interests me about that in particular is that it doesn't say like Inu mythical whatever model
Yeah.
Cerberus. It just says Cerberus, like it did with the Gorosei, right? It just said this is the Gyuki when it was Saturn. This just says Cerberus, and it's got like the awakened flames around it and everything. To me, it's kind of, it's teetering on like, we also thought that Shamrock would be like similar to Shanks in that like hockey master, right? But
Yeah.
it seems like he might have been more in the Gorosei's like realm of Imu gave them the power, right? So this could be just something that was bestowed upon Shamrock by Imu himself. In which case it kind of puts into question like what the Gods Knights like how they interact with Imu at all. I mean, we theorized that in the chapter where Imu falls to his knees, when he feels Joy Boy's hockey, there was somebody else in the room with him. We thought that could have been, one of the Gods Knights in there with him, like saying like, "Oh, what's wrong, Lord Imu?" Whatever. Maybe the Gods Knights are so close to Imu that they do get these powers. We thought that maybe the other Gods Knight, Gunko, maybe she got the power, but that was a devil fruit. It was revealed. So I don't know. The Cerberus thing is
Maybe
kind of
Emu's just
interesting.
giving off devil fruits also. Maybe it's a little bit of both. One of the other things I wanted to mention about Shamrock's sword, though, is I thought it was really interesting because Cerberus is known as like the defender of hell, right? Like he guards the gates of hell, and the other person who we know and love that uses swords a lot is Zoro, who is the king of hell.
Gotta
And
get a
I
Zoro
think like if
reference
they
in
have
here.
to fight, well, I was just thinking like if they have to fight these like God's Knights and these Gorosei, you would think Luffy would have to fight the like supposed leader, which we did find out the captain is Shamrock, but the real leader that we all like pretty much know is Figarland, right? So I think anyways, I think that he's going like Luffy's going to fight him instead, leaving this guy to be the second strongest, which would probably be Zoro's fight. So I could potentially see in the future Zoro fighting Shamrock and then beating him and taking his sword and getting a cursed sword upgrade, because I also think this could be a cursed sword.
That'd be
Like we've
cool.
talked about a
Yeah.
lot of cursed swords in the past, and we haven't really seen or done that much with them. Like every now and then we mention it again, but I think it would be cool for Zoro to have another cursed sword like
This
this.
would definitely be a big, matchup for Zoro. I like we talked about last time. It's like there has to be kind of a stepping stone to that Admiral Yonko level, rather than just like jumping straight to Yonko. Because like the first commanders, clearly there's levels between them and Luffy, right? Like Zoro and Sanji are not Luffy's level, and if Luffy's gonna be fighting all these big people, be it Figureland or Akainu or whatever, Zoro and Sanji still need like apt opponents. So I think Shamrock is definitely like in that middle high tier, and they're starting to fill out the list, so to speak, of potential opponents for our Straw Hats here.
Yeah, and one last thing I want to talk about before moving on to the mural was Gunko's devil fruit again. I didn't really give her enough credit last time we talked about it. Seeing her create like different objects, like this bird that she flies
She
on
went
with
full
it,
data
I think
revo.
is very yeah, for real. It's a very creative fruit though, so I think it's going to be more powerful than I gave her credit for in the beginning.
I think so too.
Which
Yeah,
would, like you said, then that creates more powerful opponents for the rest of the Straw Hats to have to fight.
for sure. Last thing I want to say about this before we move on is they talk about this extra person that they're gonna call upon, either an extra God's Knight or maybe somebody on Elbaf already. Could be Scopper Gaban. Maybe Gaban is a double agent, something like that. He's also on the
Yeah, I
island.
don't know about that one,
I'm
but
just
we
saying,
we can see.
if we're going,
I
if we're
am
going
curious
all
to find out who
Infinity War,
that person is,
who knows? Like
but I don't know if it's Scott or
I don't have any
Gabon.
theories personally. Like so many people are putting out videos about everything else that happened in these chapters, but that's kind of like a lingering piece. I don't know who that's gonna be, but moving
Yeah, it kind of
on.
gets overshadowed by this big
Yeah.
reveal over here, with one Robin reading the story of the first, second, and third world, and then Frankie coming upon the mural. And this mural is crazy. It
Yeah,
has literally everything. And there's a lot we can point out in this. And I think the thing that stands out the most to me is how similar these demons look like the Gorosei. Like that, like the worm thing on the right just immediately reminded me of the Gorosei. The bird thing spewing fire
yeah.
immediately reminded me of the Gorosei also.
I think
And
my
just what
my
they're
problem
doing.
with that specifically is that like it reminds me of like those devilish powers for sure, right? But I think that they might not necessarily one to one be the Gorosei. I think a lot of this like is either Emu or some incarnation of Emu, generation to generation that we're seeing. It could be anything. I mean, there's a lot of theories about how this snake on the right kind of represents the red line that maybe got put into place, and then this devil on the left side might be Emu, who's controlling the sun that they're all fighting for, and the sun is something that
Yeah,
there's so
and
much here.
we see in the text that it says, "Oh, the mankind succumbed and stole the sun," and it's really like I think we're starting to get more into like the biblical aspects that Oda's been referencing a lot with the whole endgame. I mean, the tree is literally called the Adam tree,
Yeah.
right? Like, and before we had the Eve tree also, and one of the things in that is Adam or Eve stole the apple from the tree also,
Hmm.
and I think stealing the sun and stealing like the sunlight is like a reference to that. And one of the things pointing out on the right that we can see is we see all these people in what looks like some type of conveyor belt thing. It looks like they die and then it looks like they're reborn carrying something. And I wonder if that something is similar to a sun, or the other two thoughts I had is potentially the mother flame, and that's like the power source that they're trying to harvest. And is that harvesting source actually some type of life form and they were harvesting people to get that life form?
Well,
Or is that also people's dreams? Because we know
yeah,
dreams were the
that's my
propriety.
thought.
Yeah, we know dreams are like the propriety of what created devil fruits, and that's where devil fruits come from, or from people's dreams. And if you can harvest the power of people's dreams and they literally manifest into different powers, then you can basically control and do anything you want.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I got from the right side of the mural is that, and there's an interesting point like right where, because like okay, so on the right side there's like a bunch of industrial stuff happening. I think this is indicative of like the second world personally, where this is probably the ancient kingdom on the right side. We see a lot of we it looks like Zunisha, we see Emu, we see like something that looks like the Arc Maxim, we see the Noah, like maybe these could be all euphemisms for like the ancient weapons. And it looks like at one point, that little conveyor belt of all the people going through it looks like people are born and then they go into the workforce or whatever, and then they die and they pass off. They either die with, you can see with the little halos as they're going down, or they're passing on the sun over like the conveyor belt. And I think that might be representative of like inherited will. So this all might connect to like the inherited will aspect. A lot of people are saying also that like the half moon from this, there's so many interpretations of this, but one of them is that the half moon is definitely like representative of the D clan now, right? So the D half moon, the half moon looks like the letter D, whatever.
Yeah.
And then also the half moon was the when it says the people of the half moon, that was in reference. They say that about the people
The
of
D clan.
Skypiea, when they're in Skypiea, like we see a half moon when they're dancing and everything. There's a lot of characters here that we can kind of like point to for the final war too on the right,
And
on the left.
yeah.
Right?
Or well, really quickly, like I know you mentioned that the right side you think is like the second world. I actually think the right side could be what the first world was, because we talked about this also in the last review,
Mm-hmm.
where it seemed like there was two versions of Nika before a Joy Boy, and we were saying that the second version of Nika is the one we've been reading about from the Poneglyphs, the Joy Boy that we know, and or I guess vaguely know. And we were saying that it doesn't make sense for there to be one after that Joy Boy, but almost certainly there was one before.
Right.
And I think that the stuff on the right is dictating what was happening before the Void Century, where it looks like there was a lot of industrialization and it seemed like the world was a lot more advanced before it got plunged into darkness by stealing the sun. And I think the left was Joy Boy and his allies trying to defeat Emu or whatever type of god or demon there was, in order to save the world. Because otherwise, like, I don't know if Joy Boy, which is who I'm assuming drew this mural, um, I don't know if he would have been able to like predict the future necessarily.
But it's like
He
a
would be able to draw
prophecy,
about
is
the
what a lot of
first and
people are
second world.
saying. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, you know, some of this is like prophesized because the third world definitely seems like it's Luffy, right? Like when they say
Yeah.
sure, like the dawn will break, right? Like there will be a new dawn. They've been saying that about, you know, betting on Luffy for the new dawn. Like Pedro said it. They've been saying it all throughout Wano. I feel like the new dawn is in relation to Luffy, especially in the wake of like them saying, or the Elbathian people saying like there's multiple interpretations of what Nika was. Like, was he violent? Was he a good guy? Whatever. This three worlds thing kind of delineates it into with the reincarnations of Nika over time. And I think the left side of this mural, so we can see like a lot of characters that we can almost immediately identify, right? Like we could see,
I mean, very easy ones, right? Like the Fishman, we got
yeah,
probably what is Poseidon there. What looks like the Minks are there. The Tentatas are the tiny one.
yeah,
We have literal Sun God.
looks like
What looks like
Poseidon,
Emeth, a
you know,
giant thing there. We
Shirahoshi, the
see actual
Tentata.
giants. Yeah, there's so many things. Even the whale is like a big reference to one, the whale tree on Zoe. And then two, probably something to do with Laboon. Like I think Laboon's gonna have a lot more to deal with the story also.
Yeah, I think the whales in general are gonna, like, the theory with them was always that they
But like
were like
helping them
trying
break the
to
red line.
destroy the red line, right? Yeah, like Laboon like smashing his head on and everything. I think to me the left side is like, okay, that's Luffy right there, and then we got a bunch of like his allies fighting Emu in the grand final war or whatever.
And one of the other things about looking at those allies is we know Luffy's kind of like made friends with basically everything we see here, except the ones with the wings, which you got to imagine, or at least I imagine, is probably a reference to the
Yeah.
Lunarians. So I wonder, and we know King is the last Lunarian alive. I
Is he?
wonder if
Is he the
King,
last or is he like one of the last? I think he's the last, right?
I I don't know for sure. Probably said he's the last, but maybe there's a few more. But supposedly extinct, right?
Right.
But if he is like one of the last or the last, then I wonder if he's gonna end up joining Luffy because we did know his whole thing was to find and follow Joy Boy, and he just thought that was Kaido for the longest time, probably because of all these different renditions of Nika that we've heard
Yeah.
about. But now that he knows that Luffy could be the actual Joy Boy, there's a good chance that he could join them as an ally.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, one of the things, and I know this isn't like a direct reference here, but with King, like, you would imagine that he almost would have the same reaction that like Katakuri had when Katakuri got defeated, and he's like, "Hey, you're gonna come back and be Big Mom, right?" And Luffy's like, "Yeah, of course." And that's the kind of thing that I would imagine if King is gonna fight alongside them to defeat Emu, that King would come to some kind of realization, you know, that Luffy is also Joy Boy. So I wonder if like King is going to be a part of this whole like potential Impel Down 2.0 outbreak, once, you know, all the villains come back, and then maybe he'll see Luffy as real Joy Boy or something. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to like see all unfold. Another thing that I kind of wanted to point out that a lot of people are talking about is how Frankie is the one that like stumbled upon this. Like, he's the one in the middle. A lot of people are saying that like Frankie being in the middle of this mural, of this like double spread, is indicative of the fact that like he's almost meant to be a part of this history. So a lot of people are saying that, you know, especially with his ties to Pluton, that he might be one of the people that is integral to this whole final war, because he's gonna like create Pluton in the end. He might see this and be like, "Oh, I gotta play my part," or something.
And I mean, the big thing about this is it's on the atom tree also, right?
Right.
So if he was going to make Pluton, what better material to use than the atom wood that's right here, that is the strongest wood in the world, knowing that Pluton is supposed to be some type of battleship. And back in the day, we got to imagine that a lot of ships were made with wood, similar to how they're made now. Granted, like we said, if everything was industrialized, maybe they had some type of stronger metal. But I think the Atom Tree is going to have a big part to do with it. And I think, like you said, yeah, Frankie being the centerpiece of all this, him using the Atom Wood to create it would make a lot of sense to me.
For sure, yeah. I think Frankie's gonna play a big integral part. I really liked him stumbling upon this like as Robin was reading it and stuff. One other thing that I wanted to point out about the mural, I mean, there's again so much that we can go into here, but there's a Oni looking figure, right, that looks exactly like Loki, that has like a big staff and is like fighting
the long
alongside.
hair,
Yeah, long hair. Like it looks like, but in comparison to like, it looks like right above him is like Emmett, right? The Iron Giant looks like he's right there, and potentially other giants. Like there's another like large creature right next to Shirahoshi. So I don't know if the scale of all this is 1-to-1, but I wonder if the giant Loki looking thing is going to be indicative. It kind of looks like Ors Jr., right? Also like this giant ancient Oni, and I wonder if like ancient
we did
Onis,
talk about the ancient Onis a lot in the chapter previous to this one,
like
1137.
they might be like more integral to the final story. Like I would love to see if these Onis, like Onigashima sized Onis, appear in the final battle, and this might point to the fact that, you know, that could be a possibility.
And even more things, like I'm noticing now, like I didn't even see the people of Wano are there also. Like you can see the Shuriken people. Like, but the last thing I wanted to point out was I didn't realize, I mean, I kind of figured how important like Enel would be, but this, like seeing the Arc Maxim again and seeing how it's powered by like this lightning, I wonder if the Arc Maxim was actually one of our first hints at what an ancient weapon truly is, to be honest.
That's like a foreshadowing of what Uranus is. Like to me, with like the lightning shooting down and everything, like, and Enel being this like god figure, and if Uranus is something that's controlled by the world government, that to me sounds like what, you know, the minor version of what we saw in Lelucia is, right? So maybe they've been using this for a long time.
Yeah, and he said he needed to build the Arc Maxim with a power source, and that's what his Devil Fruit was for. But maybe the Arc Maxim was just weak because the power source itself was only his Devil Fruit, and not something like the Mother Flame or like people's dreams, like we were talking about earlier.
And that's definitely something that, like in the last arc, we would kind of be theorizing about, like what this unattainable extra thing was. Like, you know, Vegapunk invented the Mother Flame, but he had said that there was this like additional power source that the Ancient Kingdom used that he never really like figured out. Like he was kind of able to get around it with the Mother Flame, which might have come from the Lunarians or whatever. But it seemed like the Ancient Kingdom had some kind of infinite power source, probably dreams, right? However they harnessed that, that they took advantage of. So I don't know. I really don't know how to put all this together for like a final.
It's a lot to take in. There's so much
that has to be like conjured up to all these things.
And there's been people that have a bunch of thoughts. I want to dive deep more and look at what other people are talking about too before I like fully form what I'm thinking about. But I would love if you guys let us know what you think in the comments, because there's so much you can interpret and like conjure up from
anything
this.
that we didn't see, let us know. I also wanted to say that the Kuja pirates are here. I don't know if you noticed, like right next to the tree on the left there, right above the Wano people. It looks like there's those are the Kuja pirates. So it's like, you know, they might have an integral thing to say. I like right under where on the left we see that demon holding the sun, who we assume is Emu probably. There's like
everything.
A boat of people on there that's probably like the celestial dragons. There's so much, man. Like I can't get through all of this. Let's tell us what you think in the comments. Tell us what you think are your best theories about what's to come. I'm sure there will be so many more times where we're pointing back to this mural and just saying like, oh my god,
this is,
you're the goat, you know?
and this is like the start of the end of the series now, right? Like we've been saying it about Elbaf, like, hey, this arc itself is going to foreshadow and lead into the very end of the series, and if this wasn't a huge tell for that, like I don't know what else is going to be. So we're definitely going to be referencing this mural, I'm sure 1,000 times in the future.
We're in the end game.
We're in the fucking end game.
All right,
Peace out, y'all. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
Peace.